Welcome to the second episode of our podcast, A Thin Line, where we share a different version of the myth you and I grew up with. Our podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, so make sure to check it out every Wednesday when the new episode is released. You can also find bonus mythical content on our Instagram account at athinline.official. Today's retelling is from the south of Asia, and our protagonist today is the polar opposite of the previous episode's protagonist. She's a villain? Well, if you have ever heard of the Ramayana, that is how you might think of her. But maybe after this episode, just like me, you might also not be so fast to brand her with the title of a villainess. Today, I will introduce you to Surpanakha's story. The story of the raakshasi who was the main instigator behind Ravana abducting Sita. The retelling you will hear very soon is an adaptation I had the pleasure of writing after I read Kavita Kané's take of Surpanakha in her novel Lanka's Princess. Villain or a victim, you ask? I was never one, but always both. I am Surpanakha, the villainess born to protect the victim, Meenakshi. From the moment of my birth, I was rejected. First by my mother, and later by my father, whom I considered my dearest. All because I always failed to meet their expectations. I wasn't as fair as Ravana or as smart as Vibhishana. All I was good for was picking fights and disappointing them again and again. Yet they never stopped for a moment to ask, why? Why was I fighting? I always fought to protect. I fought to protect Vibhishana from the boys who bullied him. I fought for myself, the child who only ever brought shame to my parents' name. With my mother's overflowing love for Ravana, my father's affection for his brightest and youngest pupil Vibhishana, always overshadowed the injustice I faced day in, day out. Even Kumba, only brother of mine, who cared for me as a brother should, could never put me first when Ravana was involved. Ravana this, Ravana that. Everything was about what Ravana liked and what Ravana wanted. It kept feeding his overgrown pride and ego that desperately needed to be broken, failing to realize that one day that very pride would be the reason he would die a miserable death and go down as one of the vilest villains in history. His ego is the reason he killed my husband, my Vidhujiva, my first love. He was a man I hoped would sweep me away from Ravana's clutches so we could live in the bliss of our own love. But instead of freeing me, he joined me in my gilded cage. Vidhujiva was the first man to look at me and see Meenakshi, not just Ravana's sister. He looked at me as if I were the most precious gem he had ever encountered. I finally received the love I had always yearned for, and in return, I gave him the only thing he asked of me, my heart. He turned me, a tigress who clawed at anyone, into a kitten who rarely bared her claws. But this peace did not last. Very soon my brothers and nephew brought back the mangled corpse of what used to be my husband claimed it was to save me and the family from him. Deep down, I knew it was Ravana's ego. As always, his pride overtook his duty as a brother. That was the moment I stopped being Meenakshi. I stopped being the victim. I embraced Surpanakha, the raakshasi. I wanted to return the pain twofold to Ravana. His scheme to reduce everything Ravana loved to ashes by his own hands. The same hands that wielded the sword to kill Vidyujiva. I made him wage a war he was bound to lose. I brought him to his doom and turned him into an entity that will be cursed for ages to come. And that is how I ended the life of a victim as a villainess. Oof. That was intense. Honestly, if you ask me, it was not only intense to write as Surpanakha, but it was also quite intense to see the events from the Ramayana unfold through her point of view in Kavita Kané's novel. So on a lighter note, and before we go into dissecting my take on Kavita Kané's Surpanakha, let me share an anecdote about how I was introduced to the Ramayana. Funnily, this is something I had totally forgotten about till I started doing research for the episodes. So when I was around 7 years old, my mother brought back a comic book of the Ramayana from one of our many trips to India at that time. From what I can recall, it was this thick comic book with a vibrant light blue cover, and it was a little bit bigger than a B5 notebook. This comic book was from a famous Indian comic book publisher called Amar Chitra Katha. However, I doubt you would have heard of this publishing house or comics if you have no connection to India. But that's alright. That's a topic for another day. Okay, now back to my story. When I was around 7 years old, my mother used to sit with me and my younger sister before bed and read a few pages of the comic every night to us. First, she would make sure that the both of us are ready to bed, and then we would sit together and read the Ramayana. My sister would be on one side and me on the other. We used to listen as she read the Ramayana to us. I was the type who used to just listen to my mother read and absorb the story. My sister, though, the total opposite. She always had a question to ask from my mother. This, in turn, always interrupted the flow and used to drive me nuts, and then we used to fight. I still remember my first impression of Surpanakha from the comic as well. When we got to the point of the Ramayana where Surpanakha makes her appearance, I didn't like her from the get-go. Why? Well, it was quite simple. She was trying to cause trouble to the couple 7-year-old me was rooting for, and she couldn't accept no for an answer, which I thought was very wrong. Anyways, when Lakshmana cut off her ears and nose as she attempted to attack Sita, after Rama and Lakshmana rejected her advances, I was like, yes, that's it. Teach that Rakshasi a lesson. Mind you, this whole thought process was formed with a 7-year-old's perception of action and consequences. But if you were to ask me right now, my perception of Surpanakha after having read her potential side of the story, I'll tell you that she may be a villainess in Valmiki's Ramayana, but in her story, she was not. In my opinion, she's just another brown girl who had to protect herself from her own family and just lost her way in life during that process. You may think, what is so different about Valmiki's Surpanakha and the Surpanakha from the retellings? Well, there are 3 key differences. The first difference is the motivation. When I say motivation, I mean her motivation behind approaching Rama and Lakshmana. In the retellings, Surpanakha doesn't proposition herself to Rama and Lakshmana only because of her lust, as Valmiki writes. Second, Surpanakha is not the coddled Ravana's sister she's portrayed to be in Valmiki's Ramayana. In the retellings, she is more of the black sheep of the family, while Ravana is the golden child. And thirdly, she doesn't simply instigate Ravana to kidnap Sita to avenge her. She plots the whole thing to teach Ravana a lesson big time. Just a reminder, all these differences come into play in the first place because Kavita Kané revises the myth about Surpanakha. If you want to get very theoretical about this type of narrative rewriting is usually categorized as revisionist myth-making. And if you were wondering what revisionist myth-making is, well, it's when authors get tired of the one third-person point of view most myths, fairy tales, and historical narratives are written in. So they take it upon themselves to rewrite the whole epic in the point of view of the characters who got very little screen time or the character who was made to look extra villainy just to ensure that the audience only loves and supports the protagonist. By the way, this whole term was coined by the American poet Alicia Ostriker. She writes about this concept in her paper, The Thieves of Language, Women, Poets, and Revisionist Myth-Making. If you are interested in this topic, make sure to read it. Now, back to our analysis. In both Kane's novel and my monologue, Surpanakha becomes more than a plot device to instigate the conflict between Ravana and Rama. Ravana is the villain, Rama is the main character. Okay. So she becomes a fully fleshed out character who is in dire need of some intense therapy to relieve all the trauma inflicted on her because of all her mommy, daddy, and sibling issues. Plus, we're also introduced to Meenakshi, the actual birth name Surpanakha was given by her father Vishravas. Meenakshi is introduced as the good-for-nothing youngest daughter from the 4 children Kaikesi, aka the mother, gives birth to. She is 100% the black sheep of the family who is kept around all because she serves a purpose for the family image and can bring in potential alliances. So, when trapped in a situation like this, Meenakshi takes it upon her own hands to protect herself and be her own advocate by donning the role of Surpanakha, the villainess. And the root cause of a villain arc, if you were to ask me, it's patriarchy. Protective patriarchy to be exact. At least that is the case in the retellings. Protective patriarchy becomes her 13th reason to embrace the role of Surpanakha, the villainess. So what is protective patriarchy? It's when men hold power and wield control over women and children while positioning themselves as protectors. If you are from a brown family, this concept will not at all be new to you. Anyways, back to the point. So when protective patriarchy has a strong hold on social units, it is likely the case the women's development and autonomy are minimal or likely ignored. So when Ravana kills her husband and calls it brotherly duty, Surpanakha sees right through his BS. She calls it what it is, male ego. It's a classic thin line, isn't it? The line between protecting someone and controlling them. Ravana didn't kill her husband to save her. He did it because he couldn't stand the idea of a woman he owned finding happiness outside of his control. So, if you think about it, Surpanakha didn't just wake up and choose to be the villain. She was a woman who realized that in a patriarchal world, villainy is sometimes the only path to justice when the very people meant to be your protectors are the ones holding you in a cage. I'm interested in knowing your opinion on Surpanakha and my analysis of Surpanakha. So, make sure to leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section and the podcast review section. I'll make sure to read all of them and reply. Then, that will be all from me today. Tune in again next Wednesday for our 3rd episode. See you next week.